Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sisters, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple there whom he loved, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his home. After this, aware that everything was now finished, in order that the scriptures might be fulfilled, Jesus said, "I thirst." There was a vessel filled with common wine. So they put a sponge soaked in wine on the sprig of hyssop and put it up to his mouth. When Jesus had taken the wine, he said, "It is finished." And bowing his head, he handed over the Spirit. Now, since it was preparation day, in order that the bodies might not remain on the cross on the Sabbath, for the Sabbath day of that week was a solemn one, the Jews asked Pilate that their legs be broken and they may be taken down. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and then the other one, who was crucified with Jesus. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. But one soldier thrust his lance into his side, and immediately blood and water flowed out. The Gospel of the Lord. If you are perplexed by looking at the missalette and wondering what did Father do with the readings, today we're celebrating the feast of Mary, the Mother of the Church. It's a new feast. It's actually so new that it wasn't even in the materials that were printed which we normally follow. And so these readings were available in the National Catholic Bishops' website, which we got from. The feast, it's interesting, is situated in proximity to Pentecost. And as I was praying over this, you could see the first reading that we chose from the Acts of the Apostles. You could see Mary's proximity in Pentecost herself. She is there praying. Pentecost, the Feast of Pentecost, is traditionally called the birthday of the church. But it's interesting that Mary would be present there insofar as you see the correlation between the church being born, which is the body of Christ, and Mary's presence overseeing the birth of the church in the Feast of Pentecost. The sacramental presence of her son's body that's born to her in the infancy. And now the two come into a beautiful relationship here. We're told in the book of Genesis, which was an alternate reading for today, we're told in the book of Genesis that the offspring of Mary would crush the head of the serpent. And it is true that this is what Jesus does. And it's very interesting in the movie The Passion of the Christ how there's a lot of emphasis placed on how Jesus in that garden stomps on the serpent that comes in during his experience in the Garden of Gethsemane. And so now you see the church being born, which is literally that which continues to stomp on the head of the serpent in her sacramental ministry. That's what the church does. Not so much with violence, but in ministering to a people who are fed on the body and blood of Christ. It's also interesting here how Mary is more specifically even attached to the apostles, as Jesus offers his mother to the disciple so that he takes her into his care. In other words, you see the apostolic church which represents her head, Jesus, is taking in Mary and cherishing her and valuing even her presence and her ministry that continues for the apostolic church. And in turn, Jesus asks Mary to take care of the apostle, the son. He's asking Mary to be literally the mother of the apostolic church. It's also interesting that you see that Jesus is offered wine and he takes it in this case, which isn't the same as the other Gospels. And it flashes us back to where Jesus' ministry is inaugurated in the Gospel of John, where at Mary's request, Jesus takes water and makes it wine that becomes symbolic of his precious blood that would be poured out at the cross. And so now here you see Mary standing at the cross, watching the blood and the water flow out from her side, where water became wine to bring joy at a great wedding feast. Now the blood of Christ, you could say, has its first consecration in feeding the church on his precious blood, literally. And in the same way that Mary cherishes her son and asks this of him at the wedding of Cana, she is now, you could see her holding his body in the vision of the Pietà, his broken body. And now she's holding that body and cherishing that body as she continues to cherish the church today for her only begotten Son. And the body of Christ continues to minister this sacramental fountain of mercy through blood and water flowing from her side in the ministry of the saints, in the gift of martyrdom, with the intercession of Mary and the continuing life of his body, the church. And we march on, the presence of Christ sacramentally present here in the world, mothered by Mary, crushing the head of the serpent.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, quiaque merum isti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit, alleluia, ora pro nobis Deum, alleluia.